Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Three Simple Men Making Their Way Through the Galaxy. I'm Tom. With me is Ryan and Mike. And today we are in Star Wars The Clone Wars animated movie, where we still continue towards part 3 of the Battle of Christophsis, where we still find our heroes, Anakin and Obi-Wan, still stuck there. But what are you going to do? You know, the droids don't want to give up. Guys, how are we?
Doing good. So I want to, right at the beginning of this film, unlike the Clone Wars episodes we've seen, we get the Star Wars opening crawl. So we do get that. But did you notice that before the long time ago, it actually starts off with dialogue?
The
Which is weird.
LTD thing with the clones, yes.
Yeah, which we don't get that in any Star Wars that we've seen or will be watching, which I found that very interesting. You had Obi-Wan kind of yelling like he was out on the battlefield, and then it started with the whole opening credit scene, which I thought was an interesting choice they made.
I thought it was just clone troopers, just like calling it out because you had like clone troopers calling out stuff on the ground and in space.
Obi-Wan was also. I had my subtitles on, so it did.
Subtitles.
That you gotta, it helps. So I found that interesting that they chose to kind of break the form there. But then we get back to kind of the television series. We get that opening wartime narration, from the front kind of a thing again, which I guess we don't have to point out every time going forward because it is going to be every time for the next many, many episodes that we start off with that, but it's always fun.
Yeah, with that, I mean, right off the bat, I think I want to just acknowledge it. It's like going back to Attack of the Clones. What we hear about the narration is how Mace Windu feared there's not enough Jedi to protect the galaxy. And now with the Clone Wars officially beginning, they're scattered and they're running thin on Jedi Knights to now be used as generals. So for the viewers here who have either seen the movie, you know where the narration goes because we got to go back towards Jabba the Hutt's son gets kidnapped. It's pretty much because it's what, like the narration says, the Clone Wars is raging on. It's getting heavy. It's just started, and all the neutral systems, all in the galaxy, are unprotected, and lawlessness and chaos are just starting to erupt.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we pretty much nailed it. Obviously, with this being like the movie was like the first entry into the Clone Wars series, so we don't really see the story. So everyone's just jumping into the battle, kind of like right off after Attack of the Clones. We see them battling for Christophsis, and you see other shots of like Plo Koon, Kit Fisto fighting battles of their own, and yeah, I mean, like you said, the Jedi are scattered, and the Separatists are really cracking down and trying to control as many star systems as they can, and got the Republic on the defense. So, Ryan, I'll turn it over to you if you have anything else you want to add.
I noticed with that opening monologue, we do get, you mentioned the Jedi we do also get our first glimpse of General Grievous, who then, in the first pretty much scene, is then mentioned by name by, I believe, Mace Windu. But so we do finally get the introduction of General Grievous, the droid general. So that was kind of cool. And then obviously our story continues.
That's actually true. That is the first mention of and first shot of General Grievous. It's and we're talking about a character who's going to be huge, very huge down the road.
Yeah. So we see that, Palpatine and Mace Windu are talking. Palpatine refers to him as his friend, which made me chuckle, actually. He's like, "Oh, my friend." And I was like, all right. But and he says it's super important that we send some Jedi to go rescue Jabba's son because we need the shipping lanes basically that the Hutts control. So that kind of pushes our story forward, and yet again, we soon find out, if we couldn't figure it out right from then and there, that Palpatine is in the shadows controlling things, and that this is all, of course, by design. Jumping ahead a little bit, but we do see, I think we could talk because it really didn't seem too chronological necessary, but we do see that Ventress, by the order of Dooku, has kidnapped Jabba's son, and then Darth Sidious. We know it's Palpatine, right? We can. It's obvious. Like, we don't need to. Okay, I always remember watching as a kid and being like, especially Phantom, and like seeing him and being like, oh, that, and like thinking I was the one who figured it out and nobody else knew it. And then like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, it's very obvious. I mean, we know, watching it the way we watched it,
Yeah.
who Palpatine becomes, and as soon as you heard his name, it shouldn't have been too hard to deduce. But I found we get that fun shot of Ventress talking to Dooku and then immediately bowing when Sidious comes in. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That it seemed like she, definitely paid him a little bit more respect than she did Dooku. And then we're on back on our favorite planet right now, because right, Christophsis.
Yeah.
And I'll just add one more thing to that
Oh, yeah.
too. So like during those scenes with Mace Windu and Count Dooku, they were voiced by their actors Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher Lee. So that was a nice little nod
That's
to give
fun.
them a cameo through their voice acting. So you had the original OG from episodes 1 and 2 voicing the characters in the animated series. So
Is that your deep dive already, Mike?
yep, couldn't
Wow, right off the bat, home run, baby.
couldn't
Man,
wait to do it because who knows, someone else might have called me out on it. It's like, no, you
yeah.
can't steal my deep dive.
No, that's a good one because, well, and I believe because, well, right, we saw some other animated Dooku in but at the time of that release, I believe Christopher Lee had unfortunately passed away. So he couldn't voice himself then. Samuel L. Jackson didn't voice his character in what we watched earlier either. So it's kind of unique that and that's actually very unique in a lot. It's very uncommon when animated versions of live action things. It's very uncommon that they actually have the same actors do the voices, because it is a very different skill set. I think of like some of the Marvel stuff, like What If. I know some actors did step up and make sure they did the voices, but a lot of times it's not common because it's a difficult thing. For the actors to do voice acting, it's not just like
I think
one
it might be.
doesn't necessarily equal the other.
I think it might be because Christopher Lee and Samuel L. Jackson. I think because we know Samuel L. Jackson definitely loves the character Mace Windu. He's the one, he wanted the purple lightsaber, and I think Christopher Lee loved Count Dooku because it's an ode to their characteristics as not just actors, as human beings as well. Because Samuel L. Jackson, he wants to be that, which he has engraved on his lightsaber, BAMF, and we all knowing him, we know what that means. And Christopher Lee's character Count Dooku, he's very suave, he's very sophisticated, and he's a great swordsman. So it's something of his personality as a very experienced, very well talented, actor as well, a British actor.
Very true. So with that, we get maybe the longest like military battle scene we've seen since the take back of Naboo, maybe. I felt like it was a little longer than Geonosis, at least from what we see. right?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
have to-
I think it's
I didn't run a timer or anything, but it seemed like we get it's a pretty big bulk of now like a battle kind of sequence. And we do get kind of right in the beginning of that charge. Mike, I saw you when we were watching it, crack a smile. Did you catch what I caught when the one of the clone troopers gets runs up to like punch a droid and gets shot, and we get a Wilhelm scream.
Yep.
So that's officially, from my tally, number 2 so far. So we haven't had one since the first one we had. So that is now our second Wilhelm scream. So
But going back to what you said before, it's like how it felt like such a long battle. I think it's because of where we are now, which is like, well, what they said was they just captured Christophsis. Well, now the droids are sending another waves. It's a lot of going back and forth. It's a lot of no ground is given, no ground is taken. It's like a stalemate. It's like World War One during No Man's Land. Like you can barely move an inch. So that's why it felt so long. And now the droid army is retreating for a second time because of the cannons. So they're gonna go for a third time because they have their plan in motion with the shield generator.
Yeah. I know there was a lot of vehicles, and as Mike likes to put it, toys that I probably didn't clock. I got hung up on the rabbit droid. That's what I'll call it. I don't know its technical name, but I feel like we'll see that type of droid again plenty other times, but it looks like a rat. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I thought it was like a giant mouse rat or something like that. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Assistant to the droid general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I did catch him. I did also well, I'm jumping ahead again, but let's talk about our introduction. Well, I'll say reintroduction now chronologically to a older, now clearly starting to be trained in the ways of the Jedi, Ahsoka. Last we saw her, to refresh everyone's memory, she was a baby, fighting off a saber-toothed tiger, and then befriending it with the Force, and now she's been assigned to Anakin as his Padawan learner against his wishes.
And against the original plan of having Obi-Wan take on another Padawan.
Mm-hmm. Or at least the request of Obi-Wan to take on a Padawan.
Yeah, and we're seeing this, and we saw how Anakin reacted too, pretty much where he's like, it's not just I think there was a deeper meaning for him not wanting the Padawan. It's like the Padawan's just going to get in my way. I'm trying to, kill as many droids, and I'm trying to get the victory for the Republic. I think deep down inside, he doesn't want to mentor a new one because he wants to still stay close with Obi-Wan. He's like, yeah, it's shitty in Christophsis right now, pardon my language, but at least I'm still with my master who's like a father figure to me. So it's brother.
Yeah,
Brother at this point.
Yeah, brother now. They're not a master Padawan anymore at this point. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a good call. Thank you.
And I think it'll continue further on too to be more relevant if we could look at that too. That could be something to look at. Like, is it a father-son? I think we had a discussion about it a few episodes ago with how Qui-Gon and Anakin seem more like a father-son relationship, and then Obi-Wan and Anakin were that brother relationship, kind of forced to be together in a sense. They didn't choose to be brothers, but they became brothers in a sense. So
I think I want to
we'll see how it plays out.
From the movie Step Brothers, just picture them of Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly and be like, do you want to do karate in the basement? Yep.
Do we just become best friends? So the plan is devised the plan's devised for Sky Guy and Snips, because we see the origin of their nicknames for each other pretty quickly in them kind of arguing with each other. Sky Guy being Anakin and Snips being Ahsoka. The plan is derived that they are going to sneak in past the shield to destroy the shield generator. At the same time, we hear that Obi-Wan, or that Yoda is going to go with reinforcements to try to head out there to send aid, and Obi-Wan will attempt to. Did he say that he was going to get captured, or that just happened?
I think it just
His
happened.
plan was to stall.
Hold them
I
off
think
as they
it's
listen
just
to it.
Obi-Wan playing chess while everyone else is playing
Mhm.
checkers.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
And the way he does it too, by the way, is just so calm. It's so collective. It's just him being that sassy Jedi that we know, and he's just pulling out the table together. General, have a seat.
Obi-Wan being the negotiator, that was like his big nickname during the Clone Wars, so he's definitely living it up.
they sit and have tea.
Yep.
We do get during the attempt on the uh, shield generator, we do get introduced to, again, I don't know their actual names. I did not look it up. I'm going to call them booby trap droids, which they're like little antennas sticking out of the ground that when triggered, these massive freaking like brute droids come popping out of the ground to fight Anakin and Ahsoka. But the cool thing here is we really get to see that Ahsoka um, knows how to handle a lightsaber already. You know, she didn't. It didn't look like she needed help, and then we see pretty quickly that she's pretty proficient in the Force too, when she drops down this the wall with the hole in it, crushing everyone else except for Anakin, which is relevant. It reminds me of one Johnny Knoxville sketch in at the end of one of the Jackass movies where the front of the building falls down and he's standing in the window, which is a reference to, I want to say it's Buster Keaton. I'm gonna look that up real quick. Some old film. We can talk while I look this up. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was the famous Buster Keaton as the house falls, where he was the one who originally did that, and it's the same kind of thing where the person standing still, something falls and just happens to be a window or a hole that they're safe, and the ground around them, or in this case, the droids around them, all get crushed. So that was kind of a fun old kind of film nod that they did, but. You know, Ahsoka pulled that off. I mean, she clearly used the Force. She knew what she was doing. It was uh, definitely risky, but it was pretty cool.
I mean, just going back a little bit, I think we got to mention one of the most important dialogues that we saw was between Ahsoka and Captain Rex. How she said, to quote it, well, I'm, Master Skywalker's Padawan, so that means I outrank you. But to Captain Rex, it's not about your rank or your title. It's about your experience and how you handle yourself in the field.
That was an interesting. I almost wrote that down as my quote, but I then I got one I really want to talk about later. But thinking about that, uh, you know, treasonous, not something you should say in the military, right? That oh, just because you're outrank me doesn't mean you really outrank me because you don't have as much experience, which is kind of funny because it's kind of, I know, Mike, you got to bear with me and Tom sometimes with our constantly bringing it back to World War II, but it reminds me of
This
one
time
of
World War
my
One. This time World War One.
well, I was gonna say this reminds me of one of my favorite series of all time, Band of Brothers, and how none of the
I
men
know.
wanted to follow Sobel, and because he was, he outranked them, but it was they didn't like, they didn't like him, they didn't trust him, he didn't have the experience, and then later on, when he meets Winters again, he says the line to him, "We salute the uniform, not the man." So it's kind of the opposite, like, or we salute the rank, not the man, and it's the opposite of what Rex is saying almost. It's like, sorry, like you got to respect the rank, is really how it should be. And, maybe you put away your personal thoughts on the person. But interesting. I really did love that we had that dynamic between Ahsoka and Rex, because we're going to see that a lot more in the future. And, you know, uh, I gotta say, I'm really excited that we got Ahsoka. She is such a little kid in this. I was watching. I was like, oh, she's so adorable. Like, because we know that she
So young and
eventually
naive.
deals with some pretty intense stuff in the future, and who knows what's happening. Again, this week that we're recording this episode is when the Ahsoka live action series comes out on Disney Plus. So we're really excited about that.
Very nice.
Unfortunately, we will be talking about it on our own, not on camera, probably immediately after watching it, and it'll be way down the line before we actually hit it with our chronological rewatch. But very excited for that, and it was cool to kind of see her origins, or rewatch her origins again, just in time.
Yeah, it's funny just seeing like the role reversal with that, because like when you have like Anakin as the Padawan under Obi-Wan, he was like the more reckless one, but then you see Ahsoka being the more reckless one, not really following Anakin's orders. Like, wait, no, no, let's run ahead, and then she gets him into trouble. So it's just a nice reference to that. Then you have them after they blow up the generator, they sit down. It's like, yeah, Ahsoka, you're reckless, but you wouldn't make it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you'll make it as mine because he understands where she's coming from, and it reminds him of who he was when he was learning under Obi-Wan. So you definitely see that
The best way
respect,
to
and you starting
describe
to see
it,
that bond between the two of them.
I think I think the best way to describe it, Mike, is pretty much like everyone's known Anakin to be reckless, and now he's got Ahsoka who's reckless, and to him it's like someone who fights the way I kind of fight. So it's like two odd numbers make a even number in a sense where it's just like two negatives make a positive or something like that, where it's just like it's gonna work well together. And then I think just to go back to clarify, I wanted to also mention this. It was pretty much about the whole Jabba scene with his son getting kidnapped. This is a crucial point for both sides of this war because this is a coin flip of fate and destiny. Because who controls Jabba and his routes controls momentum in the war. So this is what's really the big stress about the Republic.
Yeah, it's interesting up until this point. I think it's been very clear that on the bigger war front, the Separatist army is definitely way more strategic, right? At this point than the Republic. The Republic is, almost blindly fighting. Within the individual battles, we get some good strategy coming out, like Anakin deciding to do what he did with the stealth ship, and you kind of get these little snips of it, but you don't see like the broader command being very strategic as opposed to the trickery and stuff that's happening, which started with Palpatine doing what he did to start the Separatists originally with the Trade Federation, and then going forward. And it seems like a whole lot more strategy is going into these decisions on the Separatist side. Then they're more strategic, they're more manipulative, they're using, they're manipulating the situations to feed them. Obviously, it's all going up to Palpatine, who is really a brilliant strategist. And we see that, he is the puppet master, and it's all going according to plan. It seems like every time, even when they fail, right? In the last one, in Attack of the Clones, when it seemed like, oh, what, the Jedi have an army, where'd these guys come from? And we talked about Dooku saying that. Even then, he then shows up, and Palpatine's like, all according to plan, and it's very very kind of interesting.
Dooku at that moment was like
That's
Shaw
kind
from
of
Hogan's Heroes. I know nothing.
So I do want to really get into my quote, which is pretty much almost at the end of what we watched. But Yoda, the also wise Yoda, who, interestingly enough, I feel like has not been a big strategic mind in the warfare and the battling, but at the same time has still been very strategic in his ability to train or mentor the younger Jedi. And we've seen that with dialogue he's had with Obi-Wan and with Qui-Gon, and now here where he says with regards to Anakin and Ahsoka. He says, ready he is to teach an apprentice to let go of his pupil. A greater challenge it will be. One, a lot of foresight, also a lot of, you know, showing maybe Yoda's more aware of what's been going on with Anakin than we think or that they show us, because Anakin's biggest problem is his inability to let go, right? He couldn't let go of his mother, so he slaughters the Sand People. He couldn't let go of Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon and them, so he goes after Dooku and ends up losing a hand. Like he's just, or the other Jedi that died. It's just he's constantly showing that he doesn't have the ability to let go. So it's interesting that Obi-Wan is one aware of that and is hoping that, he thinks training Ahsoka will be fine, but when it's time to let her go, will he be able to do that? And we'll have to stay tuned and find out, I guess.
That's funny because that was gonna be my hot take too. Because when it starts off, it's pretty much they say we only have Master Kenobi and Skywalker to help rescue Jabba's son, and Palpatine, he says, "Well, get him out, get him going. We need this done." Well, not one of them, Mace Windu or any other Jedi at that meeting present, are going to be like, you know, if we remember his history of who Anakin was, do you really think this is the best idea? And that's why Palpatine, I think, truly wanted is like, yes, I want this because, well, like you said, Ryan, we know who he is, and he wants him to get stronger, and he wants his hate to just.
And we see it when he right at the end when Yoda finally shows up and everything. He tells him, he goes, Anakin, you're gonna go to the Teth system. And he's like, he's like, that's wild space. And he goes, and then he's like, yeah, you're gonna go there to rescue Jabba's son. And Anakin even says, he's like, you want me to like, it's the first time we actually get like what I was expecting in some of the earlier stuff, but we finally get I think I talked about it in our Phantom episode, or no, sorry, in Attack of the Clones, when he shows up and sees Watto again, and how it seemed like he was angry, but he didn't get as angry as I would have expected someone to get. But you could see that he definitely, and they didn't say it, but I wrote down, I was like, oh, you could tell that he does not like the Hutts. He knows that they were slavers. He knows that they were part of, his downfall or his downfall, his upbringing into slavery and stuff. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens.
And then, speaking of Jabba, he sent his bounty hunters to go after him, which unfortunately none of them returned. They all.
Oh, they returned.
Oh, they returned. All right, they returned. Just without a body. But that scene pretty much, it just reminded me of, it gave me Godfather Luca Brasi vibes of he's sleeping with the fishes, but this one is more of you can send your bounty hunters. They're all coming back like this.
Yep. And we know that was obviously Ventress. So
Yep.
Some off-camera badassery by her. But we're sure she took out some bounty hunters with great ease. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Anything else, fellas?
No, I'm good.
No, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what happens next with the move to the Teth, because we see Anakin already deployed there, and Obi-Wan's gonna be sent to negotiate on behalf of the Republic for those trade routes. So see what happens.
All right. Well, Mike.
Take it away. It's a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining Three Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe, and come back next week as we wrap up Star Wars: The Clone Wars animated movie. May the Force be with you always.